My boyfriend posted single and loving it on social media while we were still dating. My name is Stella Monroe. I'm 29 years old. And the night my world imploded, it wasn't because of screaming or accusations hurled across a room. It was because of a caption, just 7 words glowing back at me from my phone screen at 11:47 p.m. on a Tuesday. Brandon, my boyfriend of 2.5 years, had written it for his 3,000 followers to devour. Single and loving it. Freedom feels incredible. A rooftop photo accompanied it. Whiskey glass raised toward the Chicago skyline like he'd just conquered something. The city lights sparkled behind him, framing his smugness perfectly. The post had been live for an hour, long enough for the comments to pile up like evidence at a crime scene. Yes, King. Living your truth. Finally free, bro. Single life is where it's at. Glad you ditched the baggage. Baggage. That's what I was to them. To him that I stared at those words until they blurred into nothing. My hands went ice cold even though my apartment was a comfortable 72 degrees. Just that morning, Brandon had kissed my forehead before heading to his marketing job downtown. We'd discussed our plans for Saturday, trying that new French bistro in Lincoln Park. Nothing in his voice, nothing in his expression suggested he was already living as if I didn't exist. But if I'm being honest, this wasn't the first warning sign I'd ignored. 3 months ago, he'd quietly deleted every photo of us from his Instagram, claiming he wanted to maintain professional boundaries since clients followed him. I'd swallowed that excuse like bitter medicine. 6 weeks back, he'd introduced me as his roommate when we ran into his colleague at Starbucks. My heart had seized then, but he'd laughed it away later. Babe, it was just easier than explaining our whole situation. I told myself I was overthinking things, being insecure, making mountains from molehills. But this, a public declaration of independence, no warning, no conversation, just humiliation broadcast to thousands. Something inside me snapped clean in half. If Brandon wanted the world to believe he was single, I would make that fantasy a reality. Not tomorrow after a tearful confrontation. Not after couples therapy or a long talk. Tonight, that I set my phone down on the granite countertop, the glow of his arrogant caption still burning behind my eyelids. The condo was silent except for blood rushing through my ears like a distant ocean. I walked through the space slowly, deliberately, like a detective surveying a crime scene. The condo was mine, inherited from my Aunt Dorothy, who'd loved me more than my own parents ever did. The sectional sofa, the mounted flat screen, the bookshelves filled with first editions, mine. Brandon had moved in 18 months ago with nothing but clothes, toiletries, and a collection of vintage concert posters he never bothered hanging. He contributed 0 rent, 0 utilities, just empty promises about getting on his feet and building our future together. A strange, crystalline calm filled me, as if betrayal had burned away every ounce of hesitation and doubt. I opened my laptop and typed into Google, "Emergency Movers Chicago same-day service." There was a company available, Midnight Moves LLC. Their tagline almost made me laugh, because sometimes life can't wait until morning. I booked them for 1 a.m., 2 hours from now. While I waited for the movers, I began the methodical process of dismantling our shared existence. I pulled open drawers in the bedroom, lifting Brandon's neatly folded graphic tees and designer jeans. I folded each item carefully, precisely, like I was handling museum artifacts. His suits, still wrapped in dry cleaner plastic, went into garment bags. His grandmother's antique pocket watch collection, the one he constantly worried I'd damage, I wrapped each piece individually in bubble wrap with surgical precision. Every single belonging of his received the same meticulous treatment, because this wasn't revenge. Revenge would have been smashing that pocket watch collection against the wall. Revenge would have been cutting holes in his designer suits, or leaving his precious limited edition sneakers out in the rain. I wasn't interested in revenge, I was interested in accuracy. His Instagram declared him single. I was simply aligning reality with his public statement. By the time the movers arrived, 2 efficient men who'd clearly done midnight relocations before, I had 3/4 of the apartment boxed and labeled. They didn't ask questions, though one raised his eyebrows when he checked the time. "Where's everything going?" the lead mover asked, hefting a box of those concert posters that I'd already texted Garrett, Brandon's best friend since college. "Hey, Brandon needs a place to crash for a bit. Sending his stuff your way. He'll explain tomorrow." Garrett had responded with confusion. "Wait, what?" But ultimately agreed. Probably assuming we'd had some typical couples fight, that I gave the movers Garrett's address in Wicker Park, that they worked with quiet professionalism. I continued tidying around them, stripping away every trace of Brandon like pulling stitches from a healed wound. My movements were methodical, almost meditative, though my chest ached with a mixture of heartbreak and iron resolve. At by 2:47 a.m. Every box was gone. The movers rolled away in their truck, swallowing Brandon's existence whole. I stood in the entryway of my condo, which now echoed with a strange, clean emptiness. The kind that comes after surgery, when something toxic has finally been removed. My fingers trembled only once, when I set down the final piece of this puzzle. A handwritten note on the kitchen counter, right next to the coffee maker he used every morning. Brandon, I saw your Instagram post about being single and loving it. I wanted to help make that official. All your belongings have been delivered to Garrett's apartment. Building management has been notified that you no longer reside here. Wishing you all the best in your single life. Your former baggage, Stella. I left the note where he absolutely couldn't miss it, weighted down by his spare key. The one I'd quietly retrieved from his key ring while he slept last week, sensing something was wrong. Then I poured myself a glass of Pinot Grigio, curled up on my couch, and let exhaustion wash over me like a tide. For the first time in months, I slept without unconsciously reaching across the bed to check if the other side was occupied. But peace, I'd learn, rarely lasts long. At 6:23 a.m., my phone lit up like a Christmas tree. 47 missed calls. Over 100 texts flooding in, each one more unhinged than the last. Brandon had discovered the truth, and I knew this was only the beginning. The vibration of my phone rattling against the nightstand pulled me from the deepest sleep I'd had in months. Text after text, call after call. Brandon's name flashing like a neon warning sign that I didn't answer. I wasn't ready to hear his voice, to let his manipulation seep back into my consciousness. I wanted silence, stillness, clarity. But betrayal never gives you silence. At by 7:30 a.m., I had scrolled through dozens of messages, each more desperate and accusatory than the last. What the hell, Stella? This isn't funny. You can't just throw me out like garbage. It was a trend. Everyone's doing it. You know that. Open the door. I'm coming up right now. I almost laughed at that last one. Coming up. No, Brandon. Not anymore. His access card had been deactivated at 2 a.m. sharp. I'd spoken with building security before the movers even arrived, explaining that a guest would no longer be residing with me and needed to be removed from the system immediately. While Brandon hammered my phone with increasingly frantic messages, I was brewing dark roast coffee in my French press, calmly adding cream and honey. My hands were steady. My heart felt surprisingly light, unburdened. The strangest part wasn't my lack of guilt. It was how free I felt. But freedom doesn't mean carelessness. Last night, I'd been meticulous about documentation. Every item packed with care, every fragile belonging photographed with timestamps. His designer leather jackets, that cologne collection he treated like liquid gold, his expensive gaming setup, even those diamond cufflinks he never wore but constantly bragged about inheriting. I'd placed them all into labeled boxes and sent them off to Garrett's with professional movers who provided receipts. I poured cream into my coffee. My phone buzzed again. A new voice this time. Stella. Garrett sounded exhausted and confused. What's going on? Brandon's absolutely losing his mind. I woke up to half my living room buried in boxes. Then he's exactly where he belongs, I said evenly. Garrett paused. Did you two have another fight? Not a fight. A declaration. His declaration. I just respected it. The confusion in Garrett's voice softened into something heavier. Pity maybe. Or dawning understanding. Look, I'll hold on to his stuff for now, Garrett finally said. But Stella, he's furious. You might want to watch yourself. I already am, I whispered, more to myself than to him. When I hung up, I found myself staring at Brandon's empty side of the walk-in closet. The faint scent of his sandalwood cologne still lingered in the air, mocking me. My throat tightened briefly, but I forced the emotion down. This wasn't about heartbreak anymore. This was about boundaries. About self-respect. About refusing to be erased while I was still breathing. I opened my laptop and began systematically changing passwords. Netflix, Hulu, HBO Max, Spotify Premium. Each click felt like reclaiming territory that had been colonized. I called building management again to confirm Brandon was completely removed as an authorized guest. Then the Wi-Fi password changed to something he'd never guess. Piece by piece, I erased his access to me and my life. By the time my coffee cup was empty, the only connection Brandon had left was his voice screaming into the void of my block number. At 8:47 a.m. I finally sent one simple text message before blocking him permanently. Your Instagram says you're single. I'm just respecting that. Your belongings are at Garrett's. Please don't contact me again. Then I blocked his number, his social media accounts, his email addresses. I thought that would be the end of it. A clean break, a closed chapter. But Brandon never did know how to exit a stage once he'd claimed the spotlight. By noon, Brandon had moved the battlefield to social media, and he'd brought his Oscar-worthy performance with him. There he was on Instagram stories, tears streaming down his face, hands visibly shaking as he held the phone. His caption read, "When your girlfriend of 2.5 years throws you out over a joke post. This is what happens when insecure women can't handle confident men. I'm literally homeless." Within minutes, the comments section became a support group for his manufactured tragedy. "OMG Brandon, are you okay? She sounds psychotic. Classic toxic girlfriend behavior. You dodged a bullet, King." She was clearly unstable. I could practically hear the sympathy washing over him. Strangers rushing to console the man who'd publicly humiliated me, then played victim when consequences arrived. But then, like hairline cracks spreading across glass, the truth began leaking through the performance. One of his co-workers from the marketing firm commented, "Wait, you told me you were single at the Austin conference last month. Even asked if my sister was available." Another chimed in, "Didn't you literally go on a date with my cousin 2 weeks ago?" And then the sledgehammer blow. A DM notification on my phone from an unknown number. "Stella, this is Vanessa. I've been seeing Brandon for almost a month. He just posted this story and I'm so confused. He never mentioned a girlfriend. He told me he lived alone. Can you please explain what's happening?" My chest went cold, then hot, then numb. The betrayal went so much deeper than a stupid Instagram caption. Brandon hadn't just been pretending to be single online. He'd been living it. Living it behind my back, kissing me goodbye in the mornings while telling other women he was available and unattached. I set the phone down slowly, catching my reflection in the darkened screen. My jaw was set, my eyes hard. I didn't recognize myself, and somehow that felt exactly right. This wasn't heartbreak anymore. This was war. By mid-afternoon, Brandon's Instagram had transformed into a public courtroom, and he was losing the case spectacularly. His crying selfie remained pinned to his profile, but the comment section was no longer a chorus of sympathy. It had become an excavation site, and people were digging up bodies. His co-workers wouldn't let it go. Brandon literally told me he was single when we set him up with my roommate 3 weeks ago. "Didn't you hook up with someone at the holiday party in December? While you were supposedly in a relationship?" Screenshots began surfacing like evidence at trial. Text conversations, dating app profiles. Every time Brandon deleted a comment, 3 more appeared, reposted and screenshot and immortalized across the internet. His attempt at damage control slipped through his fingers like water. And me? I watched with an unsettling calm, like someone observing a tornado through reinforced glass. Fascinated but safely distant. My phone buzzed again. Vanessa, the woman who'd messaged me earlier, was calling now. "Stella." Her voice cracked. "I'm so sorry. I had no idea. He told me he lived alone in Lakeview. We've been intimate. I would never have." "It's not your fault," I said quietly, surprising myself with how steady I sounded. "He lied to both of us. Probably to a lot of people." There was a silence heavy with mutual shame and recognition. "You deserve so much better," she finally whispered. "So do you," I replied. After we hung up, I sat for a long moment in my living room. Afternoon sunlight streaming through the windows. The condo felt lighter somehow, as if removing Brandon's physical presence had also removed some invisible weight pressing down on everything. By evening, Brandon had switched tactics entirely. He wasn't playing the victim anymore. Now he was the righteous accuser. A new Instagram story appeared. Black background, white text, designed for maximum dramatic impact. "Some people are so controlling they'll throw you out just to feel powerful. This is abuse. This is what toxic femininity looks like. Men can be victims too." The irony nearly choked me. Minutes later, a text came from Garrett. who was now housing Brandon's entire existence in cardboard boxes. "Stella, he's saying you kept his laptop and some jewelry. He's freaking out, talking about calling the police." I replied instantly, fingers flying across the keyboard. "Everything he owned is with you. I have photos with timestamps, moving company receipts, and an itemized inventory. If he claims I missed something, he can show proof of purchase." Garrett didn't respond immediately. When he finally did, it was just one word: "Damn." I closed my phone and exhaled slowly, letting the tension drain from my shoulders that I thought maybe, just maybe, the storm had finally peaked and would now subside. But I'd underestimated Brandon's desperation. At 9:34 p.m., my friend Kiara called, voice breathless with urgency. "Stella, you need to see this right now. Check Tinder. Just trust me." I opened the app one hadn't used in years, and there he was. Brandon's profile, polished and curated with photos, most of them taken in my condo, in front of my furniture, my artwork, my life. His bio read, "Been single for about 8 months, finally ready to put myself out there again. Looking for something real." 8 months. We'd been living together for 18 months at that point. My stomach clenched, but instead of pain, I felt something colder and sharper crystallizing in my chest. I texted Kiara back. "Screenshot everything." She did. And I didn't hesitate. I opened Instagram, created a story with a black background and white text, just like his dramatic posts, but mine carried something his didn't: truth. PSA. If someone claims to be single while sleeping in your bed every night, believe them. Here are some interesting screenshots from a certain person who says he's been single for 8 months. I attached Brandon's Tinder profile, complete with photos taken in my home. Within minutes, my story exploded. Reactions poured in: shock, laughter, disgust, vindication. The tide was shifting. Brandon had wanted a stage and an audience, but he hadn't realized I had the receipts to burn down the theater around him. As night deepened, my phone rang again. Unknown number. I hesitated, then answered. "Is this Stella?" A man's voice, tired but edged with barely controlled anger. "Yes, who's this?" "My name is Cameron. I've been seeing Brandon for about 6 weeks. I just saw your Instagram story. He told me you two broke up almost a year ago." My pulse thundered in my ears. "Another one?" "No, Cameron," I said softly. "We were never on a break. We lived together until 3 days ago." Cameron swore viciously under his breath. "That lying son of a... I'm sorry you had to deal with this. Thanks for posting the truth." He hung up, leaving me alone in the quiet with only the sound of my heartbeat and the city humming outside my windows. Brandon's carefully constructed mask wasn't just cracking anymore. It was collapsing entirely, crushing him under the weight of his own lies. And with every deception exposed, every secret dragged into daylight, I realized something that sent chills down my spine. This was never about one Instagram caption or one moment of betrayal. This was about a man who had built an entire, double life on sand, and now the tide was washing it all away while I watched from solid ground. The call came from the receptionist at my graphic design firm around 11:15 a.m. on Thursday. "Stella, there's a man in the lobby. Says his name is Brandon Martinez. Claims he's your boyfriend and needs to speak with you urgently about an emergency. Should I send him up?" My pen froze above the tablet I'd been sketching on. For a moment, the office buzz, keyboards clicking, phones ringing, conversations overlapping, faded into nothing but the sound of my pulse hammering in my ears. That he was here. At my workplace. I forced my voice to remain steady. "No, he's not my boyfriend. He doesn't live with me. Please don't let him up to the office." "Understood," she said briskly, though I caught a note of hesitation. Brandon could be persuasive when he needed to be. Manipulation was his first language. 15 minutes later, my supervisor, Diana Richardson, appeared at my desk with an expression that mixed concern with confusion. "Stella," she began carefully. "Someone named Garrett just called me on the main line. Said your partner is having a mental health crisis, that you're behaving erratically. Should I be worried about you?" A bitter laugh escaped before I could stop it. "Worried about me being unstable?" I pulled out my phone, laying it on her desk like evidence in a trial. "Or worried about me finally having boundaries?" One by one, I showed her everything. The Instagram post declaring Brandon single, the Tinder profile claiming 8 months of singlehood, the moving company receipt, the time-stamped photographs of his belongings being delivered safely to Garrett's apartment. Diana leaned back in her chair, shaking her head slowly. He really played himself, didn't he? Completely, I murmured. She exhaled through her nose, sympathy clear in her eyes. Take the rest of the day, Stella. Get some space. You don't need to carry this drama into your workspace. Relief washed over me, until I stepped outside into the parking garage and saw him. Brandon was leaning against my Honda Civic, Garrett standing beside him like a reluctant hostage. Brandon's eyes were bloodshot, his jaw clenched, but his voice attempted authority when he saw me. We need to talk. Now. I stopped short, every nerve suddenly alert. No, we really don't. You can't just throw me out like trash, he said, voice rising. That was illegal eviction. I'll sue you. You'll regret this. His fury might have intimidated me months ago, made me second-guess myself, but now his words bounced off like rubber bullets against steel. You were never a tenant, Brandon, I said coldly. You paid zero rent. You had no lease. You were a guest. And according to your own Instagram post, a single one. Brandon's face flushed crimson, nostrils flaring. You're abusive, Stella. You made me homeless over a stupid joke. You're not homeless, I countered evenly. You're at Garrett's with every single item you own. Carefully packed, photographed, and documented by professional movers. Garrett shifted uncomfortably, eyes darting away. He knew I was telling the truth. He'd seen all those boxes. I need my security deposit back, Brandon spat desperately. $1,500. My lips curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. What security deposit? You never paid one. You never paid anything. I contributed. His voice cracked with desperation. I bought groceries sometimes. I cleaned. I provided emotional support. You ate my groceries, I said. You left dishes in the sink for me to wash. Heating up leftover pizza doesn't count as rent, Brandon. His chest heaved. He turned to Garrett for backup, but Garrett stayed silent, jaw tight, clearly done with this situation. You're going to regret this, Brandon hissed finally, voice dropping to something meant to sound threatening. I'll make your life absolute hell. I looked him dead in the eye, unblinking. You already did, Brandon. By pretending to be single while living with me, sleeping beside me, planning a future with me. Now you actually are single. Congratulations. You manifested your Instagram caption into reality. For one suspended heartbeat, the world went completely still. His face twisted, searching desperately for words, for leverage, for any foothold in this conversation. Finding none, I unlocked my car, slid into the driver's seat, and shut the door firmly. Through the window, I watched him slam his fist against empty air, mouth moving with words I no longer cared to hear. As I pulled out of the parking garage, my rearview mirror framed the scene perfectly. Brandon flailing uselessly, Garrett standing with arms crossed looking exhausted, and me, driving away free. But deep in my gut, I knew he wasn't finished. People like Brandon never surrender quietly. They can't handle being dismissed, being made irrelevant. His next move would be louder, uglier, more desperate. I just didn't know how desperate yet. The email arrived Saturday morning, dressed in faux professionalism that would have been laughable if it wasn't so pathetic. Subject: Demand for return of property, Brandon Martinez. Urgenti almost snorted at the Outlook account before I even opened it. Inside was an itemized list: MacBook Pro, $2,500 Rolex Submariner watch, $8,000 75-inch LG OLED TV, $2,300 KitchenAid stand mixer, $450 diamond stud earrings, $1,800 security deposit, $1,500 3 months advance rent. For $1,500 total amount demanded, $21,050 payment must be received within 48 hours or legal action will be initiated immediately. Sincerely, Brandon L. Martinez. I stared at the screen, genuinely amazed. Since when did Brandon own a Rolex? Since when did he wear earrings? The TV was mine. I'd bought it 2 years before we even met. I forwarded the email to my friend Rebecca, a litigation attorney who owed me several favors. Her response came within the hour, sharp as a scalpel. Dear Mr. Martinez, Ms. Monroe has asked me to respond on her behalf. All items you've listed are documented as belonging to her, with receipts and purchase records in her name. You have never paid rent, a security deposit, or contributed financially to her household in any documented capacity. Ms. Monroe possesses time-stamped photographs, professional moving receipts, and third-party confirmation that your belongings were delivered intact to your friend Garrett's residence. Any further false claims will result in a countersuit for harassment, defamation, and attempted fraud. Also, it's MacBook, not MacBook. If you're going to commit fraud, at least spell check. Regards, Rebecca Chan ESQ. I reread her response twice, savoring every precisely chosen word. By noon, Brandon had escalated to TikTok, because of course he had done a shaky video showed him sitting on Garrett's couch, eyes watery, voice cracking dramatically. When your abusive ex steals everything you own and makes you homeless, toxic femininity is real, guys. Protect yourselves from women like this. At first, sympathetic comments flooded in, but then Vanessa appeared in the thread. Funny how you told me you were completely single the entire time you lived with her. Remember our month-long relationship? Then Cameron joined. Yeah, same here. He lied to me for 6 weeks straight. Within 90 minutes, the video vanished, but screenshots had already spread like wildfire across social media, immortalizing his lies. By Monday, Brandon had apparently run out of platforms and sympathy. That's when he went nuclear. My phone rang during lunch. The building concierge. Ms. Monroe, there's a Brandon Martinez here with a police officer. He's claiming you're withholding his property illegally. Should we allow them up? My stomach dropped briefly, then that strange, crystalline calm returned. I'll be right down, I said evenly. The lobby was all glass and sunlight. Brandon stood there with fresh tears, gesturing wildly at me as a weary-looking officer observed the scene. That's her. Brandon pointed dramatically. She stole my laptop, my jewelry, thousands of dollars in belongings. She refuses to return them. The officer turned to me, looking like he'd rather be literally anywhere else. Ma'am, is this true? Are you withholding property? No, I said firmly, pulling out my phone. Here's photographic documentation of every item I packed, all time-stamped. Here's the receipt from Midnight Moves LLC showing delivery to Garrett's address. And here's a text from Garrett confirming he received everything. The officer scrolled through methodically, nodding slowly. Then he looked at Brandon with barely concealed exhaustion. Sir, she has documentation. Do you have proof you owned any specific items you're claiming? Brandon's face contorted. She knows what she took. The officer sighed, pinching the bridge of his nose like he'd done this 1,000 times. Sir, without receipts or specific evidence, there's nothing I can do. And filing false police reports is a crime. You don't understand. Brandon's voice cracked with panic. She ruined my entire life. The officer gave him a long, measured look, then glanced at me. Let me guess, he cheated? My lips twitched despite myself. Announced he was single on Instagram while we lived together. The officer actually chuckled. Play stupid games, win stupid prizes. Have a good day, ma'am. Brandon sputtered incoherently as the officer steered him toward the exit like a stubborn child being removed from a store. As the glass doors closed behind them, a thought crystallized with perfect clarity. Brandon wasn't just losing his lies. He was losing the audience he desperately needed to sustain them. And a man like him, left alone with silence and consequences, that was the one thing his ego couldn't survive. 3 weeks past. 3 weeks since I'd systematically packed Brandon's life into boxes and shipped them away with professional movers. 3 weeks since the police officer chuckled in my defense. 3 weeks since I'd blocked every avenue of contact. The first morning I woke up alone, the bed felt too big, too empty. The second morning it felt wide enough for peace. By the third week, I'd stopped instinctively glancing at the closet expecting to see his suits. I filled the space with myself again. Fresh flowers on every surface, music playing late into the night, wine with friends who finally admitted, Stella, we never actually liked him. Meanwhile, Brandon's world kept shrinking. Garrett texted me late one night. I get why you kicked him out. He eats my food, brings random people over, never lifts a finger. He's burning every bridge he has. I can't do this much longer. I didn't reply. Some lessons don't need an audience. Vanessa messaged once more. Thank you for exposing him. He tried moving in with me after dating for only 3 weeks. When I said no, he accused me of being controlling. Bullet dodged. Others from his orbit dropped their sympathy too. The same people who'd called me toxic now sent screenshots of him begging for money. $300 here, $1,000 there, always some emergency. Nobody was biting. Brandon's social media became tragic comedy. Daily posts about thriving and knowing his worth and leaving toxic women behind. While half of Chicago knew he was couch surfing and unwanted everywhere he landed. Then came the final email, from yet another new address. Words careful and rehearsed but naked in their desperation. Stella, I've been thinking a lot. Posting that I was single was wrong. I didn't mean to hurt you. It was just a stupid trend everyone was doing. I miss us. I miss our home, our life together. We were good together. We can work through this. I love you. P.S. I still need to pick up mail coming to your address. I typed back without hesitation. Brandon, your mail has been forwarded to Garrett's for 3 weeks. As for the rest, you announced you were single to the world. I believed you. We're not getting back together. Also, your Tinder profile still says you've been single for 8 months, which means you were single for 10 months while living in my home. Good luck in your single life. Don't contact me again. His reply was a hurricane of insults about how I'd lost the best thing that ever happened to me, and would die alone and bitter. I didn't read past the first line. I archived it like junk mail and blocked that email address too. The real twist came later, when Kiara told me what she'd heard at our cycling studio. That infamous Instagram post, the one that detonated everything, wasn't part of any trend. There was no single and loving it challenge sweeping social media that he'd made it up, that he'd posted it for one specific reason. To make another woman jealous. Some woman he'd been pursuing at his gym. He wanted her to think he was available, unattached, desirable. But when she discovered he wasn't actually single, she lost interest completely. So in the end, Brandon lost her, lost me, lost the home he'd freeloaded in, lost the audience he thrived on. All because he played a game he couldn't win against reality itself. And me? I started cycling more regularly. One Saturday, a new guy joined our group. Someone named Noah with an easy laugh and kind eyes. We rode side by side through Lincoln Park. At the water break, I said half-jokingly, "Just to be clear, you're actually single, right? Not Instagram single. Not it's complicated. Actually single?" He laughed, eyes crinkling warmly. "Yes, genuinely single. No girlfriend, no complicated situation, no secret double life." For the first time in months, my chest felt genuinely light. Back home that evening, I stood in my quiet condo, breathing deeply. The silence didn't feel like absence anymore. It felt like presence, mine. Brandon had wanted desperately to be single, declared it publicly to the world, lived it secretly behind my back. All I did was take his lie and transform it into truth. And in doing so, I'd finally set us both free.